And I see that I was muted as I started talking to everybody. So hello again to everybody who's joined us here today. I'm Miki Feldman Simon. I am the founder of I'm Back at Work, and I am also a career and executive coach. I'm very excited to have everybody join us here today to talk about how careers don't have to go in a straight line and how you can identify your unique strengths and create possibilities. And today I will share with you my story and the career path that took me to a variety of leading roles in HR, in operations, in business development, in marketing and coaching and entrepreneurship. And I will also share with you my priorities, the values that influenced my decisions at different junctions of my life, and provide you with tools that can help you do the same. And before we get started, I do want to make sure that everybody can use their webinar panel. So your webinar panel can look either like the image here on the left. Sorry, my mouse is going everywhere. The image on the left where it is expanded, or the image on the right where it is all closed up. And to open and close it, you simply click on the orange arrow at the top, and that will open or close the webinar panel for you. You can also click anywhere at the top of the panel, and then you can just drag it out of the way so it is not obstructing the view of the presentation. In the last 5 minutes of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. And to ask questions, just click on this gray questions bar, then type in your questions in this blue rectangle underneath, and I will address all of your questions at the end of the webinar. And we'll just give other people a moment to join us now. And okay, great. So here you can see my usual regular professional bio. But today, I really want to tell you a few more personal details about myself and what has shaped me as a person and has shaped my career. So I was born in Israel. I moved to Australia when I was 12, and I went to a boys' school. Yes, a boys' school. Schools in Australia at the time were mostly single gender, and high school in Australia is years 7 to 12. And I joined a high school that used to be a boys' school in year 8. And that meant that there were 120 boys in the year already, and we were 8 girls that joined the year. So we'd find ourselves as being the only girl in the class. And I have to tell you that that actually really prepared me later on in life to be the only female in the room. I have an older brother, and I also had a very dominant father. My father was a chauvinist. I fought for my rights as a female from as far back as I can remember. I grew up hearing things at home from my brother will be a lawyer or a doctor, and I won't finish my degree. And believe me, there was no reason for any of those comments. So my mother was an amazing, loving person. The atmosphere at home was not quite supportive for my personal growth. And as soon as I finished high school, I moved to Israel. I volunteered into the Israeli army, and I was a youth leader there. I taught youth about the army. I taught youth how to shoot guns. And I also worked with very underprivileged populations, which gave me the tools later on in life to be able to talk to anybody, no matter the background, no matter their education skills or anything like that. And it really opened my eyes to a very different world that I wasn't used to. I finished the army, I registered to university, and I came to Australia. I was 22 then. I was feeling old because some of my friends have finished university already and I hadn't even started. And I come to Australia for a few months and I meet this amazing guy called Bart. But my priority was to start my studies. So I said to him, I'm going back to Israel. And if you want, you can come with me. So 2 weeks later, he packed up his bags and he came to live in Israel with me. And you don't want to hear my daughter tell this story. I did make sure to always tell my kids that it is not easy to move to a different country and live with a person that you hardly know. But I can say that we're still happily together 30 years later. My early career. So a little bit about university in Israel. So it's quite different to university in the US because people are older, they've served in the army. A lot of people take time off between the army and university. And it really isn't the sort of partying culture that it is in the US. And many students work while they're studying. So I was a leader at first in a similar program to a Big Brother program that you'd consider here in the US. The next year, I was a program manager in this Big Brother program. So I used my leadership skills, I used my training skills, and I also learned a lot of interviewing skills. I then joined a company called Geometrics that was an educational program. And there I trained leaders and I trained teachers throughout Israel how to use the program. And as the company grew, I also became their HR manager. I also got married and I had my son Arden. I finished my degree in psychology and educational counseling. And I started my master's in organizational behavior. So early motherhood, I really wanted more flexibility studying, and I was mainly a single mother. I will talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And I worked as a consultant. I was doing recruiting for startups. I was also the HR manager for Demantra, a company my husband started. And I also founded a company called OPC. OPC brought the concept of EAP, which is Employee Assistance Programs, to Israel. And that was not something that they had there at the time. And my career was going really well. Life was really busy, as you can imagine. OPC was growing, and we actually negotiated a partnership with the biggest HR company in Israel. It was a real great opportunity, growth opportunity, but we had no family life. So we reached a junction where I'm basically operating as a single mum because at the same time that we had our son, my husband started a software startup in Israel. And on a good night, he would be home at 11 o'clock at night. And on a regular night, it would be 3 in the morning. He was working we were living in Israel, and he was working in the West Coast. So with West Coast time and traveling to the West Coast for 3 weeks at a time, we hardly ever saw him. My son was 3.5 years old, and I was not enjoying the single mother kind of life. And we had to make a decision between my thriving career or the family life. And at this point, my priority was my family life. And we moved to Boston for 1 year. And yes, that was over 20 years ago. So soon after we arrived in Boston, I realized that I'm not going to be able to work here. Yes, we should have looked at that beforehand, but we had this assumption that I could work for my husband's company, continue working there as the HR manager, but that did not happen. And that was really hard for me because I was so busy and my career was like at its really growing and thriving. And suddenly I was a mother and I was a wife, and I had to find my path there. Making the best out of the situation, I finished my thesis for my master's. We had a second child. We had our daughter, Sean. And also, very soon after we got here, my husband realized that he did not want to go and live in Israel. Now, I have to say that for us, it wasn't the like wanting to come and live in the US. It was usually Israel or Australia. It wasn't that our dream was to come and live here. But with my husband deciding that he doesn't want to go back to Israel, we basically made the decision that we are staying here. So we applied for the green card, and I can tell you that the moment I got my green card, I also started working. But let's take a little step back here. At that point, I'd been out of the workforce for nearly 3 years. I had no work experience in the US, and my confidence was down. But I networked with people. I told every possible person that I could about my experience and that I wanted to get back into the workforce. A friend met a CEO, an American CEO, who was struggling to work with an Israeli board and manage an Israeli subsidiary, and they were looking for an HR person to help them. And I was the perfect fit for them, because what was unique about me was the work experience from Israel. And what I thought was a disadvantage actually turned out to be the reason why they hired me. So I want you now to take a moment and think, what is unique about you? We all have something that's unique about us. So write down this question. What is unique about you? And this can be, for some people, having a child with disabilities, it's what's unique about them. Having been through some sort of an experience, having studied something very specific versus another, we all have something unique about us. So think for a moment, what is it that is unique about you? So I joined Phonetic Systems and I was the director of HR, even though I was working part-time. So it was important for me to be with my kids in the afternoon, and they didn't need a full-time person, and I was very happy to only work part-time. I was the only woman in the management team, but that didn't really bother me. The company was in the field of speech recognition, so this is quite a while back. They're the ones who started all the automated services that we call today, and they're all trying to understand what you're saying. And I can tell you that during those years, with my accent, the system did not understand a word of what I would say. But the company was doing well. We were acquired by Nuance. We have a successful exit, and I get laid off. I do realize that I was bored out of my mind by the field. Every time I would sit in a management meeting and they would talk about telephony and they would talk about switches, I would switch off. So I know now that I really wanted something more meaningful where I could contribute on a strategic level. So what's next? I reassess my priorities again, my family situation, what are my strengths and my transferable skills. And my kids are a little older and I feel like I'm ready to take on more. I am really looking for that cause that I can be passionate about and not just be bored by what the company does. And also, but my husband is traveling a lot less, so he can take on more responsibility at home. So I joined as a founding member of a company called Ginger Software, and Ginger Software sells software to people who are English language learners and people who have language-based learning disabilities. So I really connected with the cause of this company and the mission. And with my background in psychology and educational counseling, my understanding of the US school system, being an English language learner, there was a lot I could contribute on every level to this, to what the company was doing. I worked from home, but I had considerable travel. And when I traveled, the responsibility transferred to Bart. And the first time I left, I cooked, I did everything before I left, and I made sure that the kids had all their pickups organized and everything else. And when I came home, the dogs didn't have any food. And then I asked my daughter, so honey, when is the last time that you had a shower? And everybody's looking at me with these blank looks. The next time I traveled, when I came home and I said, when was the last time you had a shower? She said, yesterday. And I learned not to ask when was the time before that. I actually really learned to let go. I think after a couple of times that I traveled, my husband said, I don't cook before I go away. There's no reason that you should do it. Yes, I am blessed. But they did things in a different way. And I learned to just accept that and to let them do things their way and not expect them to do everything the way that I did and my way. Great 5 years. And before we go into what's next, I want to talk to you about identifying your skills and your strengths. So we often play down our strengths. They're just things that we are so good at that we take them for granted. And we no longer sometimes even see them as our strengths. We concentrate too much on the things that we think that we should be improving and that we're not good enough at, and not think enough about the things that we are really good at. So I want us to do this little exercise. I want you to take a moment and think about what compliments you get and you easily dismiss. So I'll say it again. What compliments do you get and you easily dismiss? I used to dismiss the fact that 5 o'clock and then we'd have a whole lot of people for dinner and I would have dinner going and everything done. I am very good at organizing things. And people would compliment me at that, but it was just so easy for me that I wouldn't think about it twice. So what is it that you easily do? So write this question about like the compliments that you get and pay attention to it. Next time you get a compliment, try and think about it some more and not just to dismiss it. Now, if you want to find your strengths, I suggest you reach out to 3 people who know you well. These could be people at work, people at home, friends. So take a moment and write down at least 3 names of these people who know you well, okay? 3 people. You should all be able to think of 3 people you could reach out to, and I will tell you exactly what to ask them. So write down the name of at least 3 people who know you well. The homework that I would say is to text each one of these people and ask them this. What would you say are my strengths? And could you provide an example of when you saw me use them? Now, the example is important because I can tell you that I've had clients that people told them the strengths and they were like, so really? That until they got the examples, they didn't really believe it. So again, the question is, what would you say are my strengths? And could you provide an example of when you saw me use them? I really recommend that you use this. It can open your eyes and show you what other people see in you. Now, if you have kids that are old enough, you could ask them too. So my kids today are 20 and 25. And I can tell you it was very cool when my daughter wrote to me that my strength is finding simple solutions to complex situations. It was lovely to see how she sees her mother today. I want to give you another little trick. So if you're job searching and you're trying to identify some of your skills, look at job descriptions, see what their required skills are. Often you look at that and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, I've done it here, I've done it there. So just having that list in front of you can help you remember the things that you can actually do. The same thing you could do is just look at other people's LinkedIn profiles, see what they write, see the skills that they have. And that will probably remind you as well of the different skills that you have. So what did I do after the 5 years at Ginger Software? Well, the CEO of Kurzweil Education reached out to me. I met him through Ginger, and he said, we need somebody to run our marketing department. And I really liked him as a person, a really smart guy. I knew I could learn a lot from him. It was also just doing marketing, a great opportunity to learn. And after being in charge of many different things at Ginger Software, I was in charge of marketing, of business development, of sales, of operations. Suddenly now to just be in charge of marketing was lovely, a nice change. So I embraced the opportunity. I also identified the things that I'm not as strong at. So I knew that my digital marketing skills were not the strongest, and I made sure to hire a team that could make up for it. And loved the work there. And at the same time that I was working there, a lot of other things were going on within the family. So my son goes off to college, and that had quite an impact on me. I really suddenly realized what it is here in the US when the kids go off to college and sort of in some ways disappear. My son went to Colorado College out in Colorado, and suddenly I would only see him a few times a year. That was really hard for me. And at the same time as that, our parents in Australia and Israel were not doing well, and we would be traveling for short visits to either part of the world to take care of them. We could also see that Bart's father in Australia and my mother also in Australia did not have much longer to live. And we identified a window of opportunity to head over there for a year. And while my son could visit us and we wouldn't really interrupt our daughter's school. And we decide that we are going to head over there for a year. And I can tell you that my most successful marketing campaign was selling this opportunity to my daughter of a year in Australia. Because any parent who's had an unhappy teenager at home knows how challenging that could be. So I leave Kurzweil and we head to Australia. This was in 2015. Sean settles in quickly. She goes to a small Jewish school with 3 of her cousins. That's going well. My father-in-law is in and out of hospital, and my mother's Alzheimer's is way worse than we thought. Most of the time she doesn't know who I am, and it's really hard. And then soon after we get there, her brain tells her to stop eating. Alzheimer's can have that effect. And we watch her quickly wither away, which was really heartbreaking. My mother passes away, and I take it very hard, and I realize that I am really not just mourning her death, but mourning the very difficult life that my mother had. I started recovering somewhat, and 2 months afterwards, we have a very serious car accident in the family. Our children are seriously injured in a head-on collision where each car is traveling at 60 miles an hour, and our life is forever changed. I'm going to stop here because often after when I tell this story, people ask, are the kids okay? And I will say they're as good as can be. When we return to the US, we're traumatized. We have to answer often. People say, oh, you're back from Australia. It must have been amazing. You don't want to have to deal with that question. We had lots of conversations around that in the house. We're back in the US. We're still taking care remotely of 2 very ill parents, Bart's father in Australia, my father in Israel. What's next? So with my mum's passing, my passion to make a difference in women's life is definitely reignited. You know, we spend time getting ourselves back together, if you want to think about it. I also realize I really want to have the flexibility to spend time with my kids and with Bart. I know that I'll soon be an empty nester, that my daughter will be leaving the house and going to college as well. But there's still a lot that I want to do. So I reassess my priorities, you can see the family situation, what are my transferable skills. So I found the company, I'm back at work. I use the transferable skills of my HR, my recruiting, the coaching, the training, the presenting, business development and marketing, the entrepreneurial mindset. And I founded the I'm Back at Work platform to provide career advice for women. And it's really dedicated to helping women return and remain in the workforce. And I'm so proud to say that through the platform, we've helped thousands of women regain their confidence and independence. Now, at the same time that I started I'm Back at Work, I was also consulting in HR and recruiting. By the way, it greatly complemented my work at I'm Back at Work, seeing everything from the other side as well. I was working at first with a few companies, and then I was working with Profitect mainly, and I started working there mostly in HR and recruiting, and it all started with the CEO of Profitect, which I recruited 20 years earlier and sent him to the US. Reached out to me and said, hey, I need some help with recruiting, and it became HR. And then as a consultant, I became their head of HR. And last year we had a successful exit. We were acquired by Zebra, and I became solely their executive coach. And I can tell you that, and I also became a certified executive coach, that today I am mainly coaching, whether it's career and executive coaching, and I'm fulfilling my passion to help people regain their confidence, become better people professionally and personally, and unlock their full potential. So what are the lessons I've learned that I want to share with you? I never thought my career path would lead in this way. I saw myself something more like straight. Maybe I'll become a CEO of a big company or something like that. But as you can see, different career paths can really lead to success and to self-fulfillment. Network. Every one of the jobs that I mentioned, I got through networking. Use your network, anybody that you know, to help you spread the word out that you're looking for work. Identify your skills and strengths. It's so important that you know what it is that you are bringing to the table. It really empowers you when you know your strengths and your abilities. Know your values and priorities. They change, and if you notice them throughout my life, there were different priorities that I had at different points of my life. And connecting with those made every decision that I made so much more powerful. Now think about what your values and priorities are, not your mother's, not your sisters or your friends. Really sit down and ask yourself what it is that's important to you. Get out of your comfort zone. That is when you grow the most and can really flourish and seek new challenges and opportunities. And I want to share with you another aspect of my life where I got out of my comfort zone. So I grew up in a house where exercise was not part of our routine whatsoever. So my father weighed over 350 pounds, and any kind of family activity would be driving somewhere in the car. And I was blessed to always be on the thinner side, so exercise was not something I had to do. But at the age of 50, I decided that I wanted to get fit. I think I also needed a sense of achievement and to remind myself that I really can do anything I set my mind to. I set myself a really high goal, a really, really high goal. I decided I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. My son said, I'm with you straight away, very excited by the opportunity to go and do that. My husband was more like, okay, if that's what you want to do, okay. Both of them are great athletes. And I trained, I walked, I hiked, but it was hard. I was not physically prepared. It was really, really hard, but I was very determined. So you can see here, we made it to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And my husband said to me afterwards that he has new appreciation for my determination. After 30 years together, I'm proud of that. Now, I've since started running. Yes, people usually start running first and then they climb mountains, but I've since started running. I regularly run now 5Ks and 10Ks, and I can tell you that at 52, I am fitter than I've ever been. And I encourage you to embrace new challenges and reach for the sky, whatever that sky is for you. So now I am happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I also want to invite you to reach out to me if you like. I offer a free 30-minute discovery session. You can either email me or go to the Calendly and just set up a time to talk with me. And please let me know if you have any questions. I'll give you a moment to just take all of that in and click on the Great Questions bar and ask any questions, any comments that you may have. Okay, so Jane is asking, who would you start networking with? Okay, so Jane, I would definitely say as many people as you can. So when I was looking for work, for me, it was definitely friends, anybody that I could, I could talk to. So it started with friends, telling them about what I'm doing, took any kind of opportunity. I know we're not quite meeting people face to face. And then reaching out further in the network, whether it's commenting more on people's articles on LinkedIn and building connections that way, and then really trying to talk with people and create connections through any kind of these social networks. You could write a blog about something interesting, and publish it, whether it's on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and connect that way. And Jennifer, so Jennifer says, I'd love to connect with you as well, Jennifer. And my question is how to develop an explanation for a disjointed career path. So one thing, Jennifer, I hope that this was a bit of an example for you to show I built the career path and I make it make sense, okay? Because somebody else could say, why did you go from HR to marketing, okay? Or what was the connection between that? So you have to find that thread of connection to, it obviously made sense to you. There was a reason for it. So how can you share that in a way that would make sense? Okay. Sorry, thank you for sharing your story at the very beginning of this journey. Do you recommend the first discussion with you, or do you do some of the legwork in advance? Okay, if legwork in advance, what would we do in advance of an initial meeting with you? Oh, sorry. Okay, let me try and answer that. So it really, so some of it is different for different people because you could be at a very different stage of your process. So we could have an initial conversation and sort of identify a few different things that are important to you. One thing is even do the few exercises that we had now and think a bit about your priorities or your values, or we can start the conversation then and then sort of explore where else it is that we could go, if that makes sense to you. There really isn't just one starting point because people are in many different places throughout this process, and that's fine. Wherever you are, we can move you further from there. Other questions? So, okay, Janet is asking, can you give more examples of how what's unique about someone can help in a job search? So sure. So first example that jumps to mind is when I worked at Kurzweil. So many of the people that we worked with in all different other companies had children with disabilities. So they use their experience from that sometimes to sell software for people with disabilities, to be advocates for that. So they use the experience that they had as an advantage. Something else could be, if you speak German or something, find a company that has a branch or headquartered in Germany where your German would be an advantage in working with them. I'm trying to think of what, sometimes even like going through a divorce or something like that can help you in helping other people through that process. So what's unique about you? Just try and think how that experience could help other people. Let's see if there's any other questions. A lot of thanks you here. Thank you for joining me here today. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to join me here today, and feel free to reach out and to join other webinars that we have upcoming. Thank you all.